Welcome to Wargaming with Dad, a YouTube channel dedicated to my love of Warhammer 40,000. Today, we will be exploring part of the story Wrath of Iron by Chris Wraight. And, as always, please spend time having a look at this story for yourself, because supporting Games Workshop, Black Library, and the authors involved is how we keep this amazing hobby going for many, many years to come. I intend to read you two short excerpts from this story that for me epitomize what it means to be a member of the Adeptus Astartes, and more importantly, how it is to be perceived as a space marine by the mere mortals who inhabit this universe. The story, Wrath of Iron, focuses on the chapter of Space Marines known as the Iron Hands, the Sons of the Gorgon. So sit back, my friends, and listen as I explore this story with you today. Primary target inbound, Sector 5-6, said Aurelia calmly, watching the data on his Augur refresh. Keep an eye on your sensoria. You'll get more of them soon. The floor vibrated as surface-to-air batteries cracked into life above the bunker. Aurelia switched to an external pit feed and watched trails of ship-killer rockets stream up into the sky. The gunship came in closer, fast and sheer, rolling away from the clouds of exploding chaff and banking steeply. Aurelia's sensors got a brief lock on it, just long enough to watch it dip to ground level and hover for a second on a thunderous carpet of engine discharge. Then it lifted off again, thrusting powerfully back into the air amid a buffet of sensor-confusing static before the rocket launchers could get a decent fix. So, here we go, he said, watching the fuzzy outlines of landed troops emerge on the scanners. 6, 7, maybe more. Let's give them a welcome. Las beams snapped out of the bunker, spiking across the smog-darkened battlefront. All along the 100-kilometer-long front it was the same, and the auger soon clogged with feedback. Landers and troop carriers were making planetfall all across the plains. Some of them ran into hostile fire and exploded, scattering their contents across the ash, but plenty more were getting through. Aurelia adjusted the dials on his instruments, trying to get a better picture. You could see men striding out of the murk towards them. The outlines were big, huge. They didn't seem to be in any hurry. 10 of them clarified on the sensoria, each one of them clad in black armor. Their eyes shone red in the ashen gloom. Throne, he whispered, still speaking over the comm, looking at the outline of their bodies and feeling suddenly cold. Drop them! The concentration of las fire from bunker F-45 was dense and well aimed. A whole thicket of white bolts flickered out from the firing slots. It wasn't panicky or random. It was straight out of the Imperial infantryman's uplifting primer. It wasn't working. He saw one of the incoming giants stumble under a concentrated volley, but the rest shrugged off hits as if they were minor irritations. They kept coming, striding with eerie slowness, advancing across the crater-pocked landscape like armored ghosts. Aurelia switched views, zooming in for a closer look. Just in time, even as he did so, the single warrior who'd stumbled resumed its march. So here we have a group of mortals up against the immortal forces of the Adeptus Astartes. It would seem this group of mortals is some kind of group of Astra Militarum guardsmen, or at least have been trained by the Astra Militarum, as they are using techniques found in the Imperial infantry. What's also clear is they're not familiar with what their enemy is. They call them giants. They say they're huge, clad in black armor, but not once at this point in the story does the characters mention Space Marines. Now, as many of you listeners will be aware, in the worlds of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, to see a Space Marine is an incredibly rare thing. Despite what we may see on our tabletops as being regular, in the universe of the 41st millennium, to see a Space Marine is a once, and perhaps not even that, once in a lifetime chance. It is possible this group of guardsmen, and I say guardsmen, imagine the word guardsman written in italics, or in inverted commas, have never seen a Space Marine before, or have any idea what they're up against. The outlines were big, huge. We're starting to get a sense of what they're up against here. Their eyes shone red in the ash gloom. I can just see that now. Imagine sets of red lights shining in the ash, moving slowly towards you. Chris Wraight describes the characters feeling suddenly cold. Fear courses through this mortal as he faces what he faces. And then, like any good Astra Militarum officer, he delivers the order, much like a first rank fire, second rank fire. The last fire beams out of the bunker, but despite their accuracy, it does not work. And as described by the author, the Astartes shrug off the hits like minor irritations. Imagine hundreds of las beams streaking from this bunker and doing nothing. Imagine how you would feel if you were one of those mortals. Imagine the fear building in your body as you see shot after shot after shot do nothing. And then, suddenly filled with a flicker of hope, one of the giants stumbles under your fire. You think you're getting somewhere. You think you've maybe made some progress. And then, as the author says, like armored ghosts, the warrior who stumbled just resumes his march. Despite all you've done, it matters nothing. These warriors keep coming. Relentless. They keep coming. Despite all your fire, despite all your training, despite all your experience, despite everything you have at your disposal in that bunker, you've thrown everything at them. And they keep coming. For me, this is what a Space Marine is. A relentless, invincible, enigmatic warrior. Not like what we see on the tabletops, where we see them everywhere. Every man and their dog owns a Space Marine. But in the 41st millennium, a Space Marine is a rare thing. A Space Marine is something to fear. A Space Marine is something that will make you feel cold and helpless, especially if you're up against them. Now let's read on and find out what happens when the mortals come face to face with these invincible, immortal warriors. A huge explosion rocked the chamber. Men flew back from the firing slits, careering through the air as an entire section of shielding blew inwards, the air filled with noise, of screams, the shudder of more munitions going off and thick blooms of powdered rockcrete. Aurelia crashed back into his chair before rolling away from it and across the floor. He heard more frantic snaps of las beams before they were doused by a deluge of fire from much bigger, much noisier weapons. He looked up. One wall of the bunker was demolished, and the bodies of its defenders lay across the rubble. Those of his men who survived the explosion were now backing away from the breach, firing steadily. Through the gap came a monster, nearly 3 meters high and encased in night black power armor. Las fire flickered from the curved surfaces of its battle plate without making much impression at all. The monster carried a blunt-barreled gun in both hands and fired in smooth, sweeping motions. Waves of explosive projectiles rippled across the enclosed space of the bunker, blasting apart the lines of defending troops. Aurelia staggered to his feet, feeling groggy. He took aim and fired back at the monster, only to see his las beam fizzle harmlessly against its breastplate. He adjusted his aim, going for the exposed cabling at the junction of its arm and chest, but another massive explosion threw him from his feet. He went down hard, nearly blacking out as his helmet cracked against the floor. A hot trickle of blood ran down his temple as he pushed himself back up. For a moment, clouds of dust and bolter fire obscured what had happened, and he looked stupidly out through a cracked visor across the scene of desolation. He saw 2 more monsters emerge from the swirling dust, firing their huge weapons steadily as they advanced. They picked off his men with silent efficiency. Some of the defending troops broke, racing across the half-ruined chamber to get to the doors at the rear, but they didn't get very far. Aurelia saw most of them torn clean in half as projectiles punched clean through them before exploding like grenades. He dragged himself to his feet again, his head light and his stomach churning. It had all happened so quickly. Dimly he could hear the thunder of battle across the plains outside. Huge grinding noises made the earth shake beneath him, and he could only guess what kind of war engines had been landed. One of the monsters turned from the slaughter to look in his direction. For a second, Aurelia stared right into its death-masked face. 2 red eye lenses stared back at him, glowing like twin embers in the smoke. The creature's vox grill, a down-turned, contemptuous snarl of metal, glinted in the light of explosions going off. Aurelia ran straight towards the monster. With nowhere to go and no chance of survival, he opted for one final act of defiance. As he ran, he fired his pistol and drew a rapier from the scabbard of his belt. For all its bulk, the monster was fast, breathtakingly fast. Before Aurelia had taken another stride, he found himself lifted up from the ground, clenched at the neck by a massive black gauntlet. He gasped for breath, and his legs kicked out uselessly. His captor squeezed, and Aurelia dropped his blade. His vision blurred, and it was all he could do to look his killer in the eye. "I fight for the Emperor," he gasped, blurting it out, as if the fact could alter anything. A metallic growl issued from the monster's vox grill. "You do not," it said, squeezing his neck and breaking his spine. "But we do." And Aurelia's lifeless body fell to the ground with a thud. The writing in this part of the story is very clever. You're taken on a journey with these guardsmen. You're made to believe that they are the loyal sons. It even mentions the Astra Militarum Imperial Infantry's uplifting primer as a reference point for the battle tactics they are using. These guardsmen believe they are fighting for the Emperor. then it is made very plain and very clear to the reader that they are not. That moment when the guardsman is snivelling out the words, "I fight for the Emperor," and as his neck snaps, the Space Marine quite clearly tells him, "You do not, but we do." Immediately in that moment, you realize that you are not reading the words of a traitor. You are reading the words of a loyal son of the Emperor, a Space Marine, an Adeptus Astartes, and as the story unfolds, an Adeptus Astartes of the Iron Hands. Now, what kind of nefarious element that occupies this universe would gather together a group of guardsmen and make them believe they were fighting for the Emperor, when in actual fact they were fighting for something else? Could it be a Xenos race? Could it be a heretic? Could it be heretic Astartes? Could it be some sort of nefarious demon? Or could it be a mixture of all of those things? I suppose if you want to find that out, you'll need to read Wrath of Iron by Chris Wraight. But if I was to surmise, there's only one group that would ever twist the minds of one group or another to believe they were doing something when they were doing something else. I will leave that one up to you, listeners. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for watching my first YouTube video for the channel Wargaming with Dad. Please, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you can, share it with your friends and share it through your various social media channels. It would be very much appreciated by myself and will help my channel grow from its infancy into something more. I hope that wherever you are, that you are safe and well and enjoying whatever time you can with your hobby. Until next time, listeners, this has been Wargaming with Dad. Bye-bye.